98 FM. Dublin Talks. Call 6797 981.
And good morning from Adrian Kennedy. It is a Wednesday. It's Wednesday, the 4th of March 2020. And all I've heard for the last week is coronavirus, COVID-19, coronavirus, COVID-19. And we have spoken about it every day for the last week. And we have decided today this is going to be a coronavirus-free zone. Okay? We're not going to talk about it today because I think we've said what has to be said so far anyhow. I've no doubt we're going to come back to talk about it again unless something big breaks today, or unless there's something specific that you feel we need to talk about with regard to coronavirus or COVID-19. Get in touch with us on 6797 981. But other than that, we're going to take a left turn here and avoid the topic altogether today. And we have to bear in mind that in this country right now we have 2 cases of coronavirus. 2 people who are being treated, and we sincerely hope make a full and speedy recovery and are back out in society as if nothing ever happened within the next week or 2. That's my hope and my wish, and we wish them the very best of luck. This is not over by any stretch of the imagination, but for today, knowing as we do that there are 2 cases that are being treated well, have been isolated, and we hope that they statistically recover like 90% of people recover from this illness, and that they can get on with their lives again. So yes, unless there's something specific that you feel we need to touch on today, we are going to avoid the coronavirus outbreak today. Okay? Now, I tell you what I want to talk to you about. I want you to get your phone in your hand, and I want you to prepare to send us a WhatsApp voice note. Because our Jeremy, we discovered it earlier on today, can't put a screw into a wall without pulling half the wall down. Our Katie had to phone her own mother, this is a true story, had to phone her own mother to ask her where to stick a stamp. When she was getting married, she was sending out the invites for the wedding, and she had to ring her mammy to ask her, what corner of the envelope do I stick a stamp on? Because she had no idea. She had never sent a letter in her life. And those 2 aren't alone, because research out today has found that for people in the age group 25 to 39, many struggle to do everyday tasks that the rest of us are well able to do. And that's what we want to find out from you right now. I want you to send me a WhatsApp voice note to 0877 98 98 98. What simple everyday things do you struggle to do? Or you can shame your kids or family members as well if you want. So, for example, let me give you some statistics from today's report. 55% of people under the age of 40 struggle to use a washing machine. 62% have no idea how to iron a shirt. 45% don't know how to defrost a freezer. And 60% would struggle to make a roast dinner. The most bizarre, 4 out of 10 people under the age of 40 would struggle to put a duvet cover on. So, I want to hear from you right now. I want you to send me a WhatsApp voice note to 0877 98 98 98. 0877 98 98 98. I want you to send me a WhatsApp voice note to that number with that stupid, simple, everyday thing that you can't do. Now, I mentioned washing machines and ironing and defrosting a freezer and making a roast dinner. I happen to be one of the people that can do all of them. Haven't I great? Wait till I just hang on for 1 sec. That's me patting myself on the back because I'm so brilliant. But there are many other things that I can't do for love nor money. So send me a WhatsApp voice note right now. Keep it nice and short and concise. And send it to 0877 98 98 98. I want to find out that one simple little thing that you just can't do that perhaps the rest of us can do. Okay? And send it on a WhatsApp voice note to 0877 98 98 98. Surely there is nobody who can't change a duvet. Call us right now on 679798. Or sorry, send us a WhatsApp voice note right now to 0877 98 98 98. What is that simple little everyday thing that you just can't do? Everyone else can do it, or at least you perceive that everybody else can do it, but you know that you can't do it. Send me a WhatsApp voice note to 0877 98 98 98. And like I said, I couldn't believe when this conversation came up earlier on that our Katie did not know what part of an envelope to stick a stamp in. Had no idea. Was blissfully unaware as to what part of the envelope she actually puts a stamp. Okay, let's kick off. So send us a WhatsApp voice note to 0877 98 98 98 like Rachel just did.
I tried to put a flat pack wardrobe together and ended up putting it together inside out. So when I put on the mirrored doors, I was like, do you have to stand inside the wardrobe to look at yourself? So I can't do flat pack at all. Literally disaster.
How can you make a flat pack with the doors inside out? Because surely the hinges are on the inside of the door. Right, Rachel, I wouldn't be far behind you, I have to be honest, and I've mentioned this before. Flat packs and I aren't the most wonderful mix, I have to be honest with you. I have made flat pack stuff, but for example, we have a shoe press in the house, and it took me a whole day to put it together. It would take a carpenter a half an hour. It took me literally the whole day. I had to take a break for lunch and everything to make this flat pack shoe press that I got in IKEA. Leslie sent me this message to 0877 98 98 98 about that little simple thing that can't be done.
I find it very, very difficult as a woman to change a tyre on my car. I can do all those other things that you mentioned, but I just can't change a tyre. It
is hard, Leslie. I'm not going to deny it. It is difficult. You wouldn't be alone with both women and men who can't change a tyre. And here's the thing, Leslie. If and when you manage to get your hands on a newer car, say, for example, maybe from 2016-17 onwards, a lot of newer cars don't even have a spare tyre. So you don't have to change it at all. But you wouldn't be alone. Emma sent me this message.
Hi Adrian, just a little tip for anyone who can't put on a duvet. What I do is I turn the duvet cover inside out. I put my hands right inside, grab the two top corners from the inside of the duvet, grab the top part of the duvet, and you're literally grabbing hold of the corners and pulling down or shaking down, as I would do, the duvet cover over it, and then you just literally pull the rest down and do it, and it's much simpler, and you're not trying to find corners.
Now, Emma, that's what we do, but I'll be honest with you, I would struggle to do it on my own. I have done it on my own, but I end up standing on the bed and shaking the duvet like a lunatic. It's much easier when you've two people doing it. It's much easier to do when there's two of you actually changing the duvet. Where am I going now? Leslie.
Hey, Adrian. It drives my mum mad when I can't change the light bulb properly. I always end up breaking the little plastic piece that it fits into, and she's had to replace them like 3 times, so now I'm not even allowed to change the light bulb.
Leslie, if there is a job around the house that is easy, it is changing a light bulb. It's the simplest thing in the world. You just shove it up and twist it a little bit. That's it. Honestly, it's that simple. How you can wreck the house changing a light bulb, I don't know. We're asking you to send us a WhatsApp voice note with that simple little everyday thing like changing a light bulb that you just can't do, but everybody else seems to be able to do. Here's a brilliant one from somebody whose name we don't have.
I was away on holidays with the in-laws, and her mother had to go home 2 days early from the holiday because her son, who's 25, was going away as well, and she had to go home and pack his bag for him to go away.
Because he doesn't know. Actually, there's another thing that bugs the living daylights out of me. I know so many people who have to have their suitcases packed for them. They can't do it themselves. Now, when I'm going away, one of the highlights for me of going away is actually packing. I love packing for myself. Now, I probably pack too much. In fact, I do pack too much, but I like doing it myself. I like knowing what I'm bringing. But I know so many people who just can't pack a suitcase properly. David has a good tip for us.
Really, what you need to do is pretend you can't do any of this stuff. Like, it's easy to make a roast dinner. It's easy to change your bed sheets. But there's a skill in making someone else do it by pretending, I can't do any of this.
Yeah, I did try that, David, until I actually ironed a shirt, and I actually ironed it well. And I now iron shirts. Are you with me? Because I know how to do it. I tried that trick, but it doesn't last forever. Here's a message from Becky.
I can't keep a houseplant alive. I've tried everything, but nope, they always die on me.
Becky, that's such an easy thing to do. Maybe you're not giving it water. If you give it water, it'll survive. Make sure it gets some daylight. Daylight and water is mainly what they need. So I don't know what you're doing wrong. Are you putting it in a dark press with no water? Jay sent me this message.
Adrian, I'm in my 30s and I cannot change a puncture on a tyre. Tried it, don't know how many times. I don't even get as far as getting the tube out of the tyre before I give up. Useless.
Well, now, Jay, I wouldn't be able to change a puncture on the tyre either. Are you talking about a car tyre or are you talking about a bicycle? If you're talking about a car, that needs specialist equipment to get the thing off. If you're talking about a bike, I used to be able to do it. I don't know if I'd be able to do it now, but I certainly used to be able to fix a puncture on a bike with a patch. Don't know if I'd be able to do it now. Jules.
Morning, Adrian. I was at my friend's the weekend and she is in her late 20s and another friend who's in her mid-30s, and neither one of them could thread a needle. And I had to sew their buttons back on from when they fell off at the weekend. Bye.
Jules, I'll be honest with you, I can thread a needle, but I find it very, very difficult. It takes me forever. The hardest, I can actually sew, believe it or not. I'm like, great, hang on. Yeah. That's me patting myself on the back again, because I'm able to sew. But the most difficult part for me of sewing is actually getting the thread through the needle. How do people do that? It takes me 10 or 15 minutes to do it. I have to get a magnifying glass to actually thread a needle. Teresa sent me this.
Hi, Jeremy, Lee here. I just can't wire a plug to save my life.
You can't wire a plug. It is... Well, you actually don't need to anymore. It's very rare that you will need to wire a plug, because all plugs on all electrical appliances come hardwired. In other words, they're fitted onto it. So they're not replaceable plugs. Now, you can still buy a replaceable plug, although they're hard to find. But the chances of you ever needing to put a plug on now are fairly rare. It doesn't happen very often. In fact, I can't remember the last time I put a plug on. I do know how to wire a plug. And the way I always remember it is brown goes to the fuse, blue goes to the left, and the green and yellow goes to the top. Brenda!
23 years old and I can't tie my lace or tell time on a clock. And my boyfriend can't change a duvet for his life.
So he can't do the duvet and she can't tie a lace. Back to the duvet. And this is a message from Claire.
Hiya, Adrian. Just a little tip on when you were talking about the duvet changing, that you keep standing on the duvet. I'm really short and I find it very difficult to do. So what I do is I hang it over the banisters and shake the duvet cover down over the duvet. And it's much easier, and you're not standing on anything and you're not breaking your backside either.
Okay, we were mentioning a couple of minutes ago about our Katie when she was sending out her wedding invitations, and the fact that she didn't know what part of the envelope to stick the stamp. Is there anybody else who actually doesn't know that? Somebody said, we have a fantastic service these days called Google. No excuse for not knowing how to do all the things that Adrian mentioned. I Googled, where do you put a stamp? And it clearly shows where it's put. For changing a duvet, it is more laziness being the issue, and having mammy changing your duvet for you. Pure laziness, says that message. And finally, a message from Michael.
How are you, Adrian? My brother-in-law moved out of house, and he rang his mammy one day to ask her, how do you make mashed potatoes? So mammy said, you peel the potatoes, you put them in a pot and you boil them. And he said, yeah, I done that, but how do you make them into mash?
You mash them. And finally, Paddy. I was talking about how I can actually sew, but I spent so long, I have to get a magnifying glass in order to thread a needle.
Adrian, seen a good little trick there for threading a needle a little while ago. You lay the thread flat on your hand and take the needle in your other hand and you rub the eye of the needle over the thread. Whatever happens, just the thread seems to just pop through the eye of the needle there. Give it a go.
That can't be right. What, the thread just works its way through the eye of the needle? No. I'll try it anyway, Paddy, when I get home. All right, thanks very much indeed. They were great. They are the stupid little things that you, everyday tasks that you and many other people struggle to deal with. You're listening to 98 FM's Dublin Talks. This is Adrian Kennedy. It's Wednesday morning, the 4th of March. Now, next on the programme, on to slightly more serious issues. Here's a really difficult conversation that a listener of ours called G has brought to our attention, wants us to discuss. On this programme in the past, we have spoken to many people who live with mental health difficulties, deep depression, bipolar, personality disorders and so on. However, we've never discussed mental health from the other side. The person who has to live with the person who is struggling with their mental health. Because for every person who is struggling with their mental health, there is quite likely another person who's in a relationship with that person, if you know what I mean. Today we want to discuss how difficult it can be when the person who you live with, the person that you love, is struggling with their mental health. Have you been in this situation? How difficult is it and how much of a strain does it put on your relationship to see your partner struggling with their own mental health? A listener who only wants to be known by G contacted us on Facebook yesterday wanting this raised. This is a very sensitive issue. And as you'll hear from the message that we got from G, her mental health issues are starting to affect him. Hi, Adrian. If you bring this up, please don't mention my name. Just call me G, which we are doing. No problem at all. This is probably the hardest email I have ever written. And even writing this makes me feel so guilty for what I'm about to say. But I don't know what to do anymore. I'm with my girlfriend 3.5 years now. And when we met, I knew that she suffered with her mental health. But it was very manageable and she was brilliant the majority of the time. However, over the past 3 years, she has gotten progressively worse. And now it's at the stage where I dread coming home to her because I don't know what awaits me. 6 months ago, she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, along with already having anxiety and depression. It's so hard. As soon as I put the key in the front door, I wonder if it'll be a good day or if I'm facing a storm. It's gotten to the stage where my own mental health is being affected. I am no longer just walking on eggshells, I'm walking on razor blades. I love her to bits, but I'm also now thinking that I have to start protecting my own mental health. After all, you only get one life, and I don't know if this is how I want to spend mine. Every day is a battle, and when things are good, it's great. But when things are bad, which they are most of the time now, it's torture. The mood swings are so hard to cope with, and I'm always waiting for the next explosion or breakdown. When my mates go home to their partners in the evening, they're mostly greeted with a smile and generally happy girlfriends and wives. But sadly, this is not the case for me. Have any of your listeners been in this situation? What did they do? What should I do? And that's from a guy who signed his name G. And I would like to hear from you on 6797981. You can text, WhatsApp or send a WhatsApp voice note to 0877 98 98 98.
The sound of the city from Kilbarrack to Kiltiernan. Dublin Talks. 98 FM's Dublin Talks.
Wednesday morning, good morning from Adrian Kennedy. We're here till midday today. Now, you heard that message that I read out before the break there from a gentleman who signs his name as G. And basically, he's with his girlfriend 3.5 years. When things are good, they're really, really good. But when things are bad, they're really, really bad. And what he means by that is that she was diagnosed 6 months ago with bipolar disorder, along with already having anxiety and depression. But the one thing that he says in his email that really stood out to me was, it's gotten to the stage where my own mental health is being affected. I am no longer walking on eggshells. I'm now walking on razor blades. I mean, just even to hear those words, it's unbelievable. Call me right now on 6797 981. Text, WhatsApp, or send a WhatsApp voice note to 0877 98 98 98. Now, Vanessa, you are living with a man who has mental health issues. You have good days and bad days with him.
Yeah. I've been living with him for the last, say, 6-7 years now, but I've been with him for the last nearly 10 years in September. And he has a thing called somatoform disorder. And somatoform disorder is when the brain convinces the body that there's something wrong, that he could eat. Sometimes he thinks he's got a tumour, sometimes he thinks he's going to die. And he also has ADD, and sometimes he can just... As I said, we've got good days and bad days, and it can put a strain on our relationship, and it can put a strain on his relationship with our daughter as well. And our daughter's only 8. But it's just, it is hard. It really is hard, but we just get on with it. And like, he supports me and I support him, and we're planning on a holiday in the summer, and it's a huge deal for him to actually get on a plane. And it's like, he's managing to keep a job down, but it is like, when he's at home, I can relate to the gentleman that sent you an email, and I can see where he's coming from, that when you come home, that you're not walking on eggshells anymore. But it can be hard. But I love him to bits, and I'll be always there for him. Like, he's been in the hospital so many times because he thinks that there's something wrong with him, and he could get every test under the sun, but it's all coming back.
Okay, so the conversation that we're having, and this is what this guy G contacted us about, is, and it's a conversation we've never had before, is the effect that it has, that somebody's mental health issues have on everybody else in the family or their partner, and in this case, it's a partner. How does it affect you?
It can be tiresome. It can be... Sometimes I'm just exhausted. I'm physically, mentally and emotionally exhausted. It can be hard. There's the times that we can't actually socialise with friends, that he's that bad, that he either goes through... He can be hot-headed and just, he can say explode sometimes, that he's fights with me, that he says that he's not well. And I said, no, you're okay, you're just having... And he suffers with panic attacks as well. And I said, you're okay. And I try and calm him down, but it can be like, it's never gotten to the thing that it's ever been a physical aggression, as in, like, he's never gotten to the stage that he's tried to hit me, but it can be verbally. Okay,
the line out of this guy's email is, I'm no longer just walking on eggshells, I'm now walking on razor blades. He's 3.5 years into the relationship, and obviously he's thinking to himself, really, do I want this for the rest of my days? Can you understand that?
Yeah, no, I can understand that. As I said, I've been with my partner 10 years. And before we had our daughter, my daughter's 8, and before we had our daughter, I could see where G was coming from. And don't get me wrong, there was at times before our daughter that I was considering leaving, and like, we've had good days and bad days, but when my daughter was born, I decided, for my own health issues and from my daughter's health issues, to take a step back, and I moved back in with my parents. And it did actually help, but the thing is, he needs, like, G's partner, My advice would be to try and get the support and try and, if she's diagnosed.
Yeah, his thing is he's with her 3.5 years. So, they're not together 20 or 30 years. They're together 3.5 years. Theoretically, it's not too late to walk away. They're not married. And he's thinking to himself, do I really want this for the rest of my days? Can you understand, or do you think it's very selfish of him? Even he said at the very start, it's the hardest email I've ever written, and even writing this makes me feel so guilty. But can you understand why he's even thinking that way?
Oh, 100%. It's not a selfish thing to be thinking about. It's not selfish at all, because if he stays there, if he believes that it's that bad and he can't see on the horizon that it's going to get any better, that he's going to end up resenting his partner.
Okay, but stay there for 1 second. Stay there for 1 second if you can, please. It's interesting, the complete contrast of messages that we're getting in on this. That man who is in a relationship with someone with mental illness, I was in a relationship with someone who suffered with their mental health. My advice to the guy is get out. Get out, as it is affecting your own mental health as it did mine. Before you're married or have kids involved, leave. It sounds harsh, but sometimes you have to put yourself first. Was hard, but one of the best things I've ever done. This guy deserves to be happy. His girlfriend doesn't have to be his responsibility, says Sinead. Another message, tell him, let me see, sorry, where's it gone? Tell him to leave. It will never get any better. Well, that's kind of giving up on the person, really. But so there literally is, for every message we're getting in saying you need to stay, you need to help her, and so on, we're getting another message saying don't, because if it's affecting your own mental health, then there's two of you with this problem. Paula, you're on 98 FM. Hiya, Paula.
How are you?
Paula, you were describing how your son is 25.
Yeah.
He was diagnosed with schizophrenia.
Yeah.
And when he was living with you, it was like walking on eggshells. Describe that to me, please.
It was horrendous. It was like you didn't know whether there was going to be a crisis when you walk in the door. It was living on edge. My own mental health suffered as well, because the worry, the guilt, the fear, and the feeling that, oh God, you want to help someone so much but you can't, and you do your whole life just goes around, revolves around them. My life revolves around my kids in any way, full stop. But literally when you have one that's has a mental health issue as bad as that, it was oh my God, my world just went into chaos. It was just unreal. Now, thank God, the 999, every time I dial 999, the ambulance would always turn up and be there, in the time of crisis, and they were very good and they were very helpful and all. And there was times
the last time you rang 999, what were the circumstances?
He'd be threatening to commit suicide and things like that.
Okay, and then did they respond immediately?
Yeah, they'd come down, there'd be either an ambulance or a Garda car. They were very responsive, I was so thankful for all their help at the time. There was times when, even in the middle of the night, he'd be up all night, and I'd get up at the next morning and he'd be still up, kind of thing. And you're trying to get on with your day, and he's kind of waiting to explode, that way. And it was horrendous, because I've another 2 kids, and it was life was really horrible, But the thing is that he wasn't wanting to take the medication, so it was a lot of sectioning and a lot of into hospitals, and I had to get used to a team coming to to know that they were coming to get my son. And that is horrible, the fact that to know that I had to wait until the team came to get my son committed, And talk about walking on eggshells, it was just unreal. But I had to do what I could to get him the help,
So in terms of you, and this is what we're talking about, the effect that living with somebody with a mental health disorder can have on the partner or the family members who don't live with a mental health disorder. This guy said to us that he is now worried, he's now thinking that he has to protect his own mental health. In other words, this is having a serious effect on him. You can obviously relate to that.
Yeah, oh my God, yeah.
So should he do... It's slightly different in your situation in that it's your son you're talking about. This guy's with a girlfriend. He's with her 3.5 years. But should he put his own mental health first?
He should find a way that's safe to do so, that he can step back a little bit. Like if the girlfriend has, like if his partner has any family members, other family members or friends, anyone that he can link in with, like, you know what I mean, he needs to grab in all his supports as much as he can, because like he obviously can't he's probably dealing with the guilt that if he, you know, of letting go and what'll I do and the whole lot. So he needs.
And he's obviously thinking to himself, I could walk away now before we get married and before we have kids and all of that. And he could. Yeah. That's the fact of it. 6797 981 is our telephone number. Text, WhatsApp, or send a WhatsApp voice note to 0877 98 98 98. Where am I going now? Ciara, you're on 98 FM. Hiya, Ciara.
Hiya, how are you?
Now, you've been living with your own mental health issues for the last 10 years. Yes. You're in a relationship. Can you see that it can be hard on the person with whom you're in a relationship?
Yes, totally understand. I've said it to him many a times, if he wanted to walk away, and he said no. I said, I totally understand the stress that you do be under. I can see, you know, we have 3 young children, and I have said it to him so many times, you know, to walk away, like, you know, I will get the help that I need and hopefully I'll get better. And he has refused. He said no. He said, I love you, and I want to be there for you, and I want to help you through it.
Well, fair play to him. How long are you with him?
Almost 17 years.
Oh, right, okay. So it's not a 3.5 year relationship. You're with him a long time.
No, long time.
So, in terms of him, you can see that it has an effect on him.
Yeah, I have. I've seen it in the past. We've both received counselling for it because we've gone through so much. So I do see the effect that it does have on him.
This guy in his email described how I love her to bits, but I'm also thinking that I have to protect my own mental health. After all, you only get one life. And like I said, this is slightly different from your situation, Ciara, in that you're with him a long time. In this case, this guy is only with her 3.5 years, so it would be easier for him to walk away. Could you understand if he were to walk away?
Yeah, I do. I totally understand where he's coming from. Like, I know it is only a 3-year relationship, and they're not married, or I'm not sure if they have children or that.
No, they don't. No.
Yeah, it would be a lot harder for him. But I do understand. You know, you do only get one shot at life, and it is a really, really hard thing to deal with on a daily basis. I totally understand. But there is also support out there for him in that situation, where he can also get the mental health support that he needs to cope with that situation. You know, there is ways around it.
And indeed, in a couple of minutes, we're going to be finding out about the sort of supports that are available for family and partners and so on. Yeah. And I'm aware that there are supports available for families and partners and everything else. But I think he's kind of thinking, you know, I know this sounds a bit harsh, but I think what this guy G is thinking is, do I really need to commit to this being in my life?
Yeah.
It's a difficult one, isn't it?
It is a very, very hard thing to commit to. So I understand where he's coming from for his own mental health. Just it'll be easier for him to walk away. But then you have the guilt then, you know, of leaving the girl in that situation. You know, he also has that guilt as well, that he doesn't want to leave her in that situation.
Yeah, but it is a little bit easier for him at this point than it would be at your stage of a relationship, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it would be.
Ciara, I appreciate your call. Thanks very much indeed. I'm going to talk to Anne straight after the break. With her partner 7 years, has serious mental health issues, and it has been hell for her. We'll talk to Anne straight after the break.
The sound of the city from Lucan to Lusk. Dublin Talks. 98 FM's Dublin Talks.
And good morning from Adrian Kennedy. Wednesday, the 4th of March, 2020. We're talking about an email that a guy called G sent to us, and he says it's the most difficult he's ever had to write. He's with his girlfriend 3.5 years. He knew at the start that she suffered with her mental health, but it was very manageable, and she was great the majority of the time. However, over the past 3 years, she's gotten progressively worse. 6 months ago, she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and he says it's so hard. As soon as I put the key in the front door, I wonder if it'll be a good day or if I'm facing a storm. It's gotten to the stage where my own mental health is being affected. I'm no longer just walking on eggshells, I'm now walking on razor blades. And then he goes on to say, I love her to bits, but I'm also now thinking that I have to protect my own mental health. After all, you only get one life, and I don't know if this is how I want to spend mine. Barry, you were in this situation yourself.
I was in the very same situation, and it's something that's still very kind of close to me. It's something that I feel I never fully kind of got over. But so I met this particular partner of mine a few years ago. We were friends for quite a while, and after about 2 or 3 years, we decided to kind of take it the next step further. Everything was fine initially at the start, and I'd say about a year into it, things started to change a small bit. This partner of mine started to kind of feel a bit down, and it turned out it was clinical depression initially at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And this progressed, I'd say, over a year. So we would have been coming towards the second year of our relationship, and things kind of took a bit of a downward spiral, and she went to get checked out, and it turned out that she had bipolar and a personality disorder as well. Now, we were in our early 20s at the time, so at that age it was a very big thing to take on. I don't have a lot of family members who have mental health issues, so
you weren't terribly experienced with it?
No, I wasn't, and I started to become, I'd say, a little bit kind of I looked into it quite a lot more than my partner did. My partner kind of shoved a lot of it under the carpet. They didn't want to kind of approach the situation that they had. Things started to kind of change, and the relationship was affected in a lot of ways. There was a lot of kind of arguing and stuff. The medication that the partner was on was causing a lot of sleep, like they were sleeping all the time. We weren't the same as we were when we initially got together. It gradually changed. I started to think I was feeling kind of distant. I felt that she was not looking at me in the same way, and I didn't know whether this was down to me personally, or was it the medication, or was it the situation that we were in. But it took its toll. I was about 3.5 years, the same as G, and I was getting kind of pressure from people outside of the relationship.
And people saying things like, get out of there.
Get out, yeah, just for yourself, because I mean, this could have repercussions for you in the future, and I mean, it was taking its toll on me.
And that's exactly what G has said, that it is taking his toll. It is affecting his own mental health at this point.
Yeah, and I mean, I can picture exactly where G is coming from.
So let me ask you: did you walk away in the end? I assume you did.
I did. I walked away from. It was kind of. Now I felt it was kind of external pressure, but then again, I was going through. I was in a kind of a catch-22 where I didn't know if I wanted to stay because I loved this person so much, or should I go? And I got out, and when I got out, then I went into a bit of a dark place. As I said, I never had much experience with mental health issues.
Why was that? Because of guilt, or
guilt mainly? I mean, a lot of people looked at me in a different way. I wasn't happy with the choice that I went with at the time. Now, I still keep saying to myself, maybe for my own sake, I did. This partner of mine has moved on, and they have a happy life. They're married now, they have kids. And I always say to myself, did I jump the gun? Did I make a mistake when I did that? And I only feel now, probably 6, maybe 7 years down the line, that I'm kind of starting to move on, but I still can't get that guilty feeling out of the back of my mind.
That you let her down, that you walked away from her when she needed you most, kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I really felt that's what I did, and it sticks with me.
Just out of curiosity, I don't know if you have any contact with her now. Do you know how she is?
I don't. I mean, we've seen each other. I think we met once after the breakup, and then this person.
But okay, so the point you're making is that you got to a stage, just like this guy G, that you decided, perhaps because of external pressure, to put yourself first and to walk away. You were racked with guilt for years. It's only of late that guilt has started to ease somewhat.
Started to ease, yeah. So I know exactly, and whatever choice he makes, it can be understood from either side.
Okay, because let me just bring in, stay there for a second, Barry. Suzanne, you're on 98 FM. Hi, Suzanne.
Morning, Adrian.
Suzanne, you, it says on my screen here, grew up in a bipolar home. I assume that means one of your parents had bipolar disorder, okay. But you can't believe the lack of empathy from people saying walk away.
No, Adrian, I can't, because... I suppose, I'm older now, so that was recognised in my home in the 70s, and my mum was very proactive in helping my dad manage that. And my dad himself would be very vocal about his managing his mental wellness. So, there was a good few kids in our house. We all grew up well. We all grew up successful. And
but in this particular story, we're talking about a guy who's in a relationship 3.5 years. So I'm assuming, I don't know because he didn't say, but I'm assuming this guy is in his late 20s or his early 30s or something like that, and he is looking at it. Is saying
it's a long
you only get one life, and I don't know if this is the way I want to spend mine. Can you not understand that?
I absolutely can, Adrian. I absolutely can, because I know from my own personal self, my first child passed away 19 years ago. So then I had a nervous breakdown, of course I did. So then the rest of my life then, I've had to manage my mental wellness. And I've learned in my own life, when you put your mental wellness before everything, your husband, your children, and you manage that, everything will fall into place for you.
Okay, but that's easier for you to say, Suzanne, than for this guy to say. He can't force her to.
Adrian. I don't think so, Adrian, because when my child passed away, we weren't married, my husband and I, so he could have left because I wasn't coping with that at all. And he stuck by me. And
I was just talking. You see, when you're talking about family members, it's a little bit different. This guy isn't a woman's son. He's not the woman's husband. He's a boyfriend of 3.5 years. Now, you heard Barry there a moment ago describing how he was in the exact same situation, and he essentially couldn't take it anymore, so he walked away.
And he was racked with guilt for years.
Yeah.
So it gets very, very hard. There's no saying it doesn't. I've had very dark times here in my own life, and it gets very dark. And if the person stays steady and stays with you, I'm not saying it's the right thing for the fella to do, to stick in it, Adrian. If he can't cope, he can't cope. So therefore...
Because the worry obviously will be the longer he stays in the relationship, the more difficult it is to walk away.
And Adrian, the remark that struck me the most was when he puts his key in the door. He doesn't know what he's going to face.
Correct.
There was times when I was a young one when I went in home and my dad wouldn't be well, and you wouldn't even have your foot in the door and you'd know that he wasn't well. You know what I mean? So I totally got that comment. I totally got it. And it's such a fine line. It's such a fine line. But I'd be screwball today without my husband. Screwed without him. Without his calmness and his approach to the whole thing. I would have been screwed without him. And
okay, but say with Barry and with this man G, do you understand how at their point in a relationship they just felt they had to put themselves first?
I do feel that because I've often looked and wondered, how's my husband still there? I've often wondered that,
Did you ever say to him, as one of our previous callers said, did you ever say, I could leave?
I told him, yeah.
He never did, but he hasn't, though. He hasn't.
Because...
I've just gotten a message here, and I don't know if I can agree with this. The walk-awayers, in other words, the people who leave, are weak people. Is that fair to say to somebody who's in a relationship with somebody 3.5 years? I don't think it is. Let me just bring in one last call, and we've used voice disguise to protect this woman's identity. And we're calling this lady Anne. Her partner of 7 years has serious mental health issues. And Anne, you describe how it has been hell for you.
Yeah, it's been hell. There's good days, but the bad days are definitely a lot more. There's a lot more bad days than there is good days.
Describe briefly for me a bad day.
Okay, so... a bad day would usually start around 4 o'clock in the evening. That's usually the time that he would wake up. and then they just you can't tell if it's going to. You can tell kind of by the air of when he walks in what it's going to be like. They can be that he's angry, not at me, but at the whole situation.
At the world, basically.
You can feel the anger, and it's like you're just wondering, what's he going to say? What's he going to do? Then you try and get you can't even get an appointment because 4:00. There's no appointments anymore. Then he takes his medication. The medication could take hours to kick in. At that point, that's no good because it could be you could take your medication at 7:00 in the evening and you might not get to sleep till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And then the whole day it just keeps going like that every day.
And like I said, it's a conversation we've never had on this show before about the sort of effect that the mental health of a partner or a family member can have on other people who are mentally well. Listening to you talk, Anne, has had a dramatic effect on you.
It can be destroying because you wait for the good days. You keep on waiting until the good day comes, and then the good day comes and it's the best day of your life. And you can, maybe he might get up at a reasonable hour. You might get to do something together. He might even just crack a smile.
Do the good days outweigh the bad, or has it become the opposite?
The bad days, at this point, it's hard to tell because they're just so often. But the good days are amazing.
Okay, and so tell me this.
That's your partner, that's who you've been waiting for. You know that person.
Yes, so
when they come, and they're...
And when he's good, he's great to be around.
Yeah.
Okay, but the problem is that those days have become fewer and further between. Yeah. Now, the final question to you, Anne, and I really appreciate you sharing this with us, and I'm sure our listeners understand why we have disguised your voice because you're still in this relationship. Mm-hmm. Have you thought about walking away?
Yeah, of course.
Do you think you ever will?
No. Because what happens with bipolar disorder and stuff like that is you go into relapses and you can get out of one of them. Sometimes they last longer sometimes they might last 2 weeks. One of ours has lasted 2 years.
So is that are you saying to me that you're hoping against hope that things will improve?
Yes, because I've seen it happen before, and so you wait till it happens again.
Well, all I can say, Anne, is I have my fingers and toes crossed for you that it does improve and it does get better. And as I said, I really appreciate you sharing your story with me. We're going to take one more call after the break, and this is a man who is going to be able to advise you on what to do if you're living in this sort of situation. We'll take a quick break. We'll take his call straight after the break. Don't go away. It's 11 o'clock across Dublin. Good morning. This is Adrian Kennedy. This is 98 FM's Dublin Talks. And this is Trish with Wednesday's top headlines.
Thanks, Adrian. Hundreds of homeowners will not lose part of their gardens under new Bus Connect plans. The NTA has reviewed more than 13,000 public submissions. They've reduced the number of homes whose gardens will be impacted by 42%. The Department of Health says it doesn't think there's any more cases of the coronavirus in the Republic other than the 2 identified. However, it's warned more people could present in the coming weeks after the confirmation of a second case last night. Dublin City Council says it's still considering whether it'll fight a decision to approve a housing development in Raheny. That's despite reports today suggesting it would not take a judicial review against An Bord Pleanála's decision to approve over 600 apartments beside St Anne's Park. And HubSpot has announced it's creating 450 jobs over the next 3 years. The positions will be created at the US technology firm's offices in the Docklands as well as remotely across Ireland. And you're up to date on 98.
98 FM. Dublin Talks. Call 6797 981.
And good morning from Adrian Kennedy. I just want to wrap up this conversation where we've been talking about the, and you could hear an awful lot of people affected by this, the email that we got from the guy called G with his girlfriend 3.5 years. And by the sounds of it, her mental health has gotten progressively worse, where now he's at a stage that he no longer feels like he's walking on eggshells. he feels like he's walking on razor blades. He says, I love her to bits, but I am also now thinking that I have to protect my own mental health. After all, you only get one life, and I don't know if this is the way I want to spend mine. I'm joined on the line by Paul Gillian, who's the CEO of St. Pat's Mental Health Services. Paul, welcome to 98 FM. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good morning.
Paul, that email is, in fact, this is a conversation that we've never had before on this programme regarding family members or partners of somebody living with mental health difficulties. What did you make of that message?
Well, I think it's always dangerous to comment about something that comes in by email, but I think it's important that the two parties involved get support. That's really crucial. Clearly, an email from a person who goes to the bother of sending something in that's demonstrating such distress, they clearly need support, but equally the partner in this situation also needs support. So, it's important, I think, very often for people, both those experiencing mental health difficulties and those trying to provide them with day-to-day support, that they also reach out and get help. Because
okay, so what sort of supports are available for somebody like this?
Yeah.
We had a lot of calls from people living with this exact same thing. Some of whom have been very supportive of their partner, others of whom couldn't essentially take it anymore and walked away. For somebody who wants to provide that support, what can they do?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of points I want to make. Firstly, I think the voluntary sector in this regard provides the best supports. I mean, almost all of the voluntary organisations providing mental health care, Mental Health Ireland, Shine, all of these organisations provide support for carers, family members. They usually take the form of groups that are held in the evening time or whatever, and they're really, really good. And I would encourage anybody, but I would encourage people who have mental health difficulty themselves to reach out and engage with these groups, but also I would encourage family members, partners to do the same thing. The voluntary sector in mental health is often the unsung hero. They are the ones who provide this type of support best, and it's obviously it's nobody's making value judgments. It's confidential, and you're able to talk to other people who are in the same situation. You can share experiences and support each other. So I would encourage that. But I think there's a couple of things we need to emphasise in the discussion. There's a couple of things people need to do if they're trying to support someone with mental health difficulty. The first one is to inform themselves, and there's two reasons or three reasons for that. Firstly, often people take things personal that shouldn't be taken personal, because a person might have anxiety or depression and may be demonstrating symptoms of that a partner would interpret in a personal way when they shouldn't. But secondly, people often attribute stuff to mental health difficulties as an easy way out. So, I think we have to be really careful. People with mental health difficulties tend to direct their angst, their sadness, their anxiety in on themselves. It's not necessarily at other people. Now, that in itself can be difficult to live with, but effectively we have to be careful that people don't use mental health as an excuse where there's other stuff going on in a relationship, and I think that's really important. I think it's very important that people who are trying to support someone with mental health difficulty, that they see, they try to understand what's happening from that person's perspective while protecting themselves. Because yes, it's obviously, you can't help somebody else if you're yourself in distress. And I think it's really important that where a relationship is concerned, that people try to focus on the positive. Very often when a person's having difficulties, the difficulties dominate. And I think if Well,
in fact, I spoke to a woman just a couple of minutes ago, and she described how in her 7-year relationship with her partner, when they have great days, they have amazing days, but unfortunately those amazing days have been outweighed by not so good days.
Yeah, but you could say that about any relationship. So I think it's really important that we don't view relationships or support, families that where somebody has a mental health issue as necessarily different. It's really about learning the individual needs of all the people involved in the relationship, in the family, and trying to meet those. I think sometimes the difficulty with mental health difficulties is it becomes a stigma label, and everybody defaults to that. So there's a row, and the person says, "Oh, that's because Mary or John suffers from depression." No, step back from that and try and look at the other factors that might be involved, and try not to, of course, acknowledge that there are difficulties there. Of course, try to understand from a person's perspective what's happening and support. But I think it's often easy to, default back to, "Oh, this is because so-and-so has a mental health difficulty." So I think it's
okay. So yes, no, I take all of that. That every relationship has its good days and its bad days, and don't necessarily define your relationship around the mental health issues. But let me ask you, this guy in his message described quite clearly that he feels his own mental health is now being affected. This is where he needs to start looking after himself and reaching out for help.
I think that's really important. You can't help somebody else unless you're healthy yourself. That doesn't. Of course, nobody is always healthy all of the time, but you cannot help somebody if you are distressed. So you need to go and seek the help you require. Now, help is help. I don't mean professional help. I think there's lots of different ways people can get help, from friends, from relations, from work colleagues, from voluntary, from a GP, from support groups. So there's a spectrum, but you can't. You've got to regroup and assess what do you need to stay emotionally healthy, and then to use that to help the person that you love. You cannot do that if you are distressed yourself. It's just not possible. So it's really important that carers, that people who are supporting others, think about that. And in a way, again, we want to try and not label. Everybody goes through times when they are experiencing emotional difficulties. Sometimes they become mental health difficulties. So this is about people looking after themselves and then trying to support and look after their partner, their loved one. If you don't do that, you will run into trouble, because you can't keep going when you're starting to run into difficulties yourself.
All right, Dr. Paul Gilligan, CEO of St. Patrick's Mental Health Services, thanks very much indeed for talking to us on 98 FM. And I hope that was of use to you. He was obviously not going to ever say anything like this guy should walk away, or even advise this guy to stay, but say that there are supports for people in relationships or family members of people who are living with mental health difficulties, and St. Patrick's Mental Health Services would be a good place to direct you. You're listening to 98 FM.
The sound of the city, from Lucan to Lusk. Dublin Talks. 98 FM's Dublin Talks.
It's Wednesday morning. I'm Adrian Kennedy, and that man across the desk from me is one blonde Mr. Jeremy Dixon.
Strawberry blonde.
Whatever.
Yeah, we're going to rename this part of the show Strawberry Blonde Moments. Just to include everybody. We have to be inclusive on this show.
Yes, anyway. This is Blonde Moments.
Yes.
Explain to our listeners, Jeremy, what Blonde Moments is all about.
This is where you phone us and tell us about a blonde moment that either you had or a family member had. This is something that has happened that is so stupid that you've either said or done that you've gone, oh my God, that was such a blonde thing to say. Let me give you some perspective and an example of it. Last weekend I was up in Dundalk. Have you ever been to Dundalk, by the way?
I have, yeah.
I wanted to show my young fella where the Battle of the Boyne took place and all.
Well, it's not in Dundalk.
Well, I know. Yes, I know.
It's nowhere near Dundalk.
It's not far off it.
It's miles away.
Okay, I was up that neck of the woods. It's a stone throw.
It's not. It's about a 40-minute drive away from Dundalk.
So how long did it take the Protestants to get to the Boyne then?
I don't know.
Anyway, I was up that neck of the woods and I decided to go into Dundalk. It's a place I very rarely go to. And we wanted to go in for a bit of lunch. Mm-hmm. And I said to my wife,
no, you've already announced your blonde moment. Your blonde moment was thinking the Battle of the Boyne was in Dundalk.
That's all the Boyne country up there. It's all the Boyne. Okay.
Drogheda, I'd argue, is the Boyne country, not Dundalk.
It's actually closer to
Dundalk.
Anyway,
go on.
Anyway, we were driving through Dundalk and we were like, let's stop off for a bit of food. And there's a pub on the main street of Dundalk, and I said, that looks like a lovely place, Sue. Why don't we go into Bodrin's? And she says, where's Bodrin's? Where's Bodrin's pub? And is it into Bodron's pub there? And she says, that's not Bodron's pub.
It's Bowron's.
It's Bowron's. I never knew that's how you spelled Bowron.
Bowron, yeah.
The spelling of... see if anybody knows. Very quickly, how do you spell Bowron? Text us now, 0877 98 98 98. Bowron, you know the thing you bang there?
Yes, I know what it is.
That thing.
Yep.
How would you spell that word if you were to spell it in a sentence? Does anybody know? Text us now, 0877 98 98 98.
Anyway, you wanted to go into Bodron's.
I have never...
And I guarantee you Bodron's had a sign on the top of the pub, and it probably had a little picture of a Bowron beside it.
Oh, it actually did.
It actually
and
did.
I didn't...
Cop the two.
Who knew that Bowron was spelled that way? Bodron. It shouldn't be spelled that way, should it?
But it's Irish.
B-O-D H-R-A-N.
Or a father N.
Oh, there was no father on the sign.
Well, there was...
So that might have been the problem.
Yeah, that's how you spell Bowron. Who didn't know that?
Nobody knows how to spell Bowron.
Well,
even you.
Sorry, everybody knows. They're all texting in the right answer here. Everybody knows how to spell Bowron.
How in your life would you ever need or want to spell that word?
The fact that there was a little picture of a Bowron beside the name Bowron would be a bit of a giveaway, wouldn't it?
Great little pub, by the way, if you're up visiting the site of the Battle of the Boyne.
Yeah, you'll be in Drogheda, maybe.
You'll be probably in Drogheda. I'm nearly convinced it's...
The Boyne, the River Boyne runs through Drogheda, which is about 40 kilometres from Dundalk.
Yeah, look at the picture of the pub. Isn't that a lovely little spot? Look.
Oh, yeah, there's Bowron's. Yeah, look at the Bowron there. Look.
Bodron's pub, yeah.
In fact, show me it again. Show me the picture again for 1 second.
The Bodron.
The Bowron. Okay, where are we going? We want to hear from you about your blonde moment. That moment that you described a pub as the Bodron. Even though there's a little picture of a Bowron and you didn't think it was a Bowron. Look, Jeremy, look at the messages coming in. Everybody knows how to spell Bowron except you. Now,
B-O-W-R-A-N.
No, B-O-D-H-R-A father N.
I'd spell it.
Bowron.
By the way, can I just say on a separate note, Dundalk has more pubs per square inch than any other place in the world, I'm convinced.
I haven't been in Dundalk for years. I can think of no reason to visit Dundalk. Honestly.
To visit Andrea and Jim?
No.
The Cores?
Maybe,
no?
But that'd be about it. Shauna, you're on 98 FM. How are you, Shauna?
Hey, how are you?
Shauna, share with us, please, your humiliating blonde moment.
Oh, it was so embarrassing. I was in work yesterday and my boss said to me, will you fly down to the chemist, fly down to Boots to pick my wife up? Dior light. And the way he said it, he just said it as two separate words. He said Dior light. I was like, yeah, the perfume. You're very good. He was like, no, the sachets. I wanted the ground to swallow me up.
And say, what sort of perfume did you think it was?
Dior Light.
Dior. Perfume.
Christian Dior Light. Oh, yeah.
But my sister has the Dior Poison perfume, so I just thought it was another perfume. I was so embarrassed.
Can you picture the ad now? For the woman you love, Dior Light.
Oh, stop. We were all in knots for the whole day.
Now, have you ever tasted Dior Light tablets?
Me? The sachets?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, aren't they the most disgusting thing you could ever taste?
Oh, they're horrible, yeah.
They're basically, Adrian, you would know this because you're always healthy, but if you lose a lot of water in your body, yeah,
they're for rehydration.
They're for rehydration, and it's like drinking seawater.
Oh, really?
No,
yeah,
they're awful.
They're nasty. They really are.
So he wanted you to get Dior Light, and you thought he meant Dior Light perfume.
I thought he was being good treating her. Yeah.
But maybe he was treating her. Maybe she was dehydrated.
Yeah, well, he was treating her, yeah. All right.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a great blonde moment, Shauna. Thanks very much indeed. 6797981 is our telephone number. Text, WhatsApp, or you can send a WhatsApp voice note to 0877 98 98 98 with your blonde moment. That moment you did or said something so stupid that it can only be described as a blonde moment. We all have them. We have them regularly. Louise, you're on 98 FM. Hi, Louise.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Louise. Louise, tell us about your blonde moment.
There's so many of them.
Oh, right.
For years.
Sorry,
I'm actually blonde, so I'm allowed to have 5 a day.
Oh, right. Okay, because we always describe our Katie as the definition of a blonde moment because she has them every day of the week. But she's not blonde. But anyway, what is your blonde moment? Or tell us about the best one.
The best one, I don't know if it's silly or a blonde moment, but I was doing my driving test and I was pregnant at the time, so I was heaving through it all and I just thought it'd never end. But I eventually got to the place where the centre, and I actually drove in. He said, just park it there, and I took 2 spots. And I didn't know that, like, that's kind of like
a black mark.
A mark.
So, like, you parked with the black with the white line in the middle of your car.
I get out of the car. Yeah, I took over 2 spots, and we went back in. And he said, "Louise, I nearly failed you because you took 2 spots." But I think he felt sorry for me because I was heaving throughout the whole.
But he actually passed you, and he believe it or not, could have failed you because to take up 2 spots is disgraceful parking, really.
Yeah.
But I hit a cyclist doing my drive. This is a true story. I hit a cyclist doing my driving test, and I still passed.
Okay. You hit a cyclist?
Well, he cycled out in front of me. I remember vividly. You know where the Drop and Well pub is?
Yep.
In Milltown.
I do.
Driving down. Was doing brilliantly on the driving test, had my tail between my legs, was just about to drive up the Orwell Road, and this gobdaw of a cyclist came out in front of me and hit off the bumper of my car. And I said to your man, I guess that's my test failed. He said, no, he cycled out in front of you.
Oh, very good.
No, I wouldn't advise people doing their driving tests to seek out cyclists to hit. I don't think it's a good idea, but...
No, indeed. Anyway, Louise, that is a major blonde moment. Thanks very much indeed for your call. 6797 981 is our telephone number. Bear in mind that when you park at the test centre, the tester, the guy who's going to, or woman who's taking you out for your little spin, is going to be walking out and looking at your car. And if you can't even park your car into a parking space, that's not a good sign. Okay, if you're taking up 2 spaces. Here's a WhatsApp voice note from Johan about blonde.
Hi guys, I have a blonde moment for you. After listening to your show last week, my mum gladly informed me that my blonde moment was a few years ago. Do you remember when all the schools used to run in Santry? And well, I was after doing the run in Santry with my school, and about a week or 2 later, all the girls in my class were talking about Santry towels. And I came home really upset to my mum, wanting to know why I never got a towel off Santry. And my mum had to then explain to me what a Santry towel was.
Oh, no.
That's a conversation.
I was probably like 10, 11. But yeah, that was my blonde moment all them years ago. I was devastated I never got a Santry towel.
That's a great story.
Have you ever got a towel in Santry?
No, I've never bought a towel in Santry. Jenna, you're on 98 FM. Tell us about your blonde moment, Jenna.
Hiya. So, years ago, I was out with a group of friends way before smartphones when you had to ring 11811 to get the number you wanted to look for. So I rang 11811.
You've just reminded me, where have all those companies closed down?
Let me try and ring
them. I have no idea.
Do they even exist anymore? The 11811 or 11850?
What's the number?
11850.
Wouldn't imagine so.
Well, hang on, let's ring them. 11850. Just bear with me 1 sec now.
Yeah, go on,
Hang on.
No. They're gone, are they?
Oh, no, it's ringing.
Oh. Hang on, just 1 second. Hang on.
They're obviously very busy.
Hi, 11850. How can I help?
I'm okay, thank you. I'm having a lovely day. Thank you. Hope you're okay as well. Bye-bye. I don't know what to say to her. What number do I need? The point is, I would imagine that's like, you remember the ad?
That must be the first call she's had since maybe before Christmas.
Yeah, remember the ad years ago for Heineken, the complaints office?
There's all cobwebs.
And there's cobwebs, like the phone never rings.
Anyway, sorry, Jenna. Back in the day when you had to ring those guys.
Yeah, so I rang 11811 looking to get a taxi ranks number.
Okay.
And I rang 11811 and I asked the operator, can I have the number for 11811, please? In front of all my friends, even the operator just started wetting herself laughing.
That's hilarious.
Never get over it.
That's hilarious. That's brilliant. Anyway, thanks for reminding us that they actually existed at one stage.
No bother.
Well, sorry, can you answer a question to me, lads?
Yeah, go on.
How much did that call just cost me?
Oh, probably 50 cents or something.
€2 or something.
Ah, genie.
So, I'm curious now, Jenna. Thanks very much. Does anybody ring those directory inquiry numbers anymore? Anybody?
I did just now, and
I know.
You're telling me,
and your account is going to be closed because it's.
I ring a lot of premium phone numbers off my phone, so I'm used to that kind of stuff. I'm always ringing these premium numbers. No, I don't think they
Does anybody ring them anymore?
They wouldn't have charged me because they didn't provide a service to me, did they?
No, you rang.
But you didn't give me anything.
You didn't ask for anything, but you still rang her. She has to get her wages paid.
She's probably having her lunch, having a lovely cheese roll, and I'm after
Here, ring her back and ask her how many calls she gets every day.
You ring her off your phone.
No.
You have a company phone.
Yeah.
Pay 98 FM page.
No. Go on. Off you go.
No, I can't afford it.
You can't afford it?
I've 2 kids to feed at home. I'm not ringing directory inquiries.
Okay, call me right now on 6797981. You can text, you can WhatsApp, or you can send a WhatsApp voice note to 0877 98 98
I'm on the
98.
phone,
Carol,
right?
yeah, you are, Carol, that's right. How are you, Carol?
My dad's always about to call me when I'm on the phone. Every time I ring someone, he walks in and calls. No, but a funny blonde moment I had was when I was pregnant a few years ago, and I used to drive my car to a bus stop beside the... what am I saying? I used to drive my car to a car park beside the bus stop into town because I was too lazy to walk. But I remember I used to go with one of my friends, Lauren, and she used to say to me every day nearly, "Did you park your car in the car park today?" I'd be looking actually over and I'd be saying, "Did I?" And then I'd be like, no, I definitely didn't park it today. I walked down to the bus stop this morning.
So you couldn't even remember if you left your car there or not?
No, I literally couldn't. And then I'd walk up, I'd get as far then off the bus stop at the end of the hill and then walk up to my garden, and then it wouldn't be until I got to the front of my garden that I realised I've no car, like.
That's
Okay, we have a question for you. This Friday night you're going with your mate, yeah? You're going with Lauren into town.
Oh, am I, yeah?
Well, no, I don't know what you're doing the weekend. I don't know yet. No, but supposing you and Lauren are going to Captain America's this Friday for something to eat, yeah?
Right.
And you want to ring Captain America's to book a table.
Yeah.
How do you get their number?
Google.
Yeah.
So that's how you do it as well.
You Google it.
Yeah, sorry, that's it. I thought you were saying that I was getting the tickets.
Oh, do you have a meal for Captain America's to give to girl, Adrian? Hello?
I've nothing for Captain America's, no.
No, nothing, sorry.
I'll send you to the cinema, though. How about that, Carol?
Okay.
IMC Cinemas, there you go. All right.
Thanks.
Keep them coming in. 67979 981 is our telephone number. Text, WhatsApp, or send a WhatsApp voice note to 0877 98 98 98. We'll take a couple more of your blonde moments straight after the break.
The sound of the city, from Saggart to Sutton. Dublin Talks. 98 FM's Dublin Talks.
And this is Adrian Kennedy. That man there is Jeremy. Now, Jeremy, as you know, at the weekends I do some work outside of this radio station.
For charity, which you're very good.
Well, no, I work for a company called Kevin Rowe Events, and we do fundraising events all over the country. We do Oscar shows, and we do lip sync shows, all sorts of shows, yeah?
Yeah.
But we also do Strictly shows. And you know what a Strictly show is? It's a fundraiser where people are dancing with each other and whatever.
It's basically a rip-off of Strictly Come Dancing.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But it's a fundraising thing. Anyway, Kevin, the guy that I work with, sent us this WhatsApp voice note. Will you have a listen to this?
Adrian, how are you? As you know, I run a lot of the dancing shows around the country and stuff, and I used to think that the Viennese waltz was called the Peonies waltz. So I had a meeting there about 12 months ago with a committee, and we were talking about all the different dance styles, and I was telling them about this dance. We can do, the cha-cha, the Charleston, and the Peonies waltz. And the whole place burst out laughing. It was one of the most embarrassing things I've ever said.
Now, Kevin, there is such a dance as the Peonies waltz. Have you never done it? But have you never done the
That's your own business.
I'm just saying.
That is your own business. How embarrassing. Thanks, Kev. That's brilliant. Where else? This is from Grace.
Hey, lads. My blonde moment was a couple of years ago, I was down the country with a cousin of mine, and we were out having a few drinks, and with a few drinks, I realised I need to go to the toilet, but didn't know where the toilet was, so I decided this cunning idea to follow two girls' feet as they were walking. So I was looking on the ground, following their feet into the toilet. When I looked up there, I was standing in the cubicle with the two girls. Thanks, lads.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's very good. Let's squeeze in another couple of blonde moments. And Lauren, you're on 98 FM. Hi, Lauren.
Hiya.
Hi, Lauren. Tell us about your blonde moment.
So a few years back, me and my family were berry picking in Wexford, and my sister turned around to me and goes, go along for a high five. Do you know what I mean? So I went along and I went running full speed, and she moved out of the way and I ended up clattering the arse off some owl.
And what did the owl say?
Well, she wasn't happy.
You must have hit the owl on a right wallop.
Oh, I did. I could hear you want to hear
the smack on her arse.
And sorry, so what size was her arse that you were doing a high five?
And you hit her arse?
It was big enough.
Jeez, her arse must be going up her back.
I've never lived it down.
There's something, by the way, you were talking about doing that kids nowadays will never be able to relate to, yeah?
Yeah.
Our whole summer when we were kids growing up was out picking strawberries and raspberries off. Kids nowadays don't do that.
I never did it again after that.
Well, I would imagine so. But when was the last time you saw a kid picking a strawberry?
No, you don't.
Or raspberry?
No, you don't. That's a great story, Lauren. Thanks very much indeed. Nadine, hello, Nadine.
Hiya.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. Nadine, tell us about your blonde moment.
Well, my blonde moment was at my son's communion mass last May. We were sitting in the bench, and I was kind of saying to him, is it like the left hand on the right hand, or is it the right hand on the left hand? And he was like, oh man, would you stop? You should know all this, like you made your communion years ago. So we were in the queue anyways, and we're going up, and he's in front of me, and he goes ahead, gets his holy bread, and I go and get mine, and I was like, thanks very much, Father, and I went and sat on the bench, and I was like, what the hell did I just say? And he was like, did you just say thanks very much for bread? You're supposed to say amen. And I was like, oh my God, Scarlett.
Thanks for the bread, Father.
Yeah, thanks very much. That's my breakfast for this morning. I missed it. I had my makeup done. It was brilliant, I swear. And you could just see everyone giggling around the church, laughing, holding their mouths and all. And I was like, oh my God, just get this mass over and done with. I'd say the priest was eyeballing me for the rest of the mass.
I tell you, you're some woman if a little piece of wafer bread fills you up. I know it's the body of Christ and all that.
I'd be stuffed after getting communion. Stuffed I do be.
Yeah, the thing does be stuck to your palate for about half an hour.
It does be, yeah. It definitely does be.
And by the way, just to tell you guys, I don't know if many of you are aware of this, you can get gluten-free Jesus.
Can you indeed?
Yes.
Is it not all gluten-free? I think it is. I think all Holy Communion is gluten-free.
No. I think I'll be past and going up and getting the communion anymore.
Thanks for the bread, Father. Nadine, I'd love to send you to the cinema courtesy of 98 FM. How about that? Would you like
Thanks
that?
Very much.
Thank you very much. You put a smile on my face today. Thanks, Nadine.
Fine, thank you.
Isn't she great?
Here's just a fascinating bit of information to finish off on, because every single person listening has probably had Holy Communion at one stage.
No, not necessarily.
Yeah, did you know that Holy Communion is just made from 4 different ingredients?
Which are?
What would you say? What's in it?
The body?
No, the actual.
I don't know. What's it made
of?
Not
the religious
what's made of?
It's literally flour, water, yeast and salt.
That's it.
Anybody.
Where's the body bit?
That is the body. 4 different things. You can literally make it at home yourself.
We've one final WhatsApp voice note from Jojo.
The blonde moment my daughter had was when we were in a well-known restaurant, and I was having a burger and she was having chicken wings. And in the restaurant there was a picture of a cow to show you where all the pieces of beef came from. And she turned around and asked me what part of the cow did her chicken wings come from. And to say I was skitting was an understatement.
That's fair. This comes back to a conversation we actually had on the programme last week about whether you tell the kids the truth about where their meat comes from.
Well, you should probably tell your kids that chicken doesn't come from a cow.
Yes.
That's a given, isn't it?
It is a given, yeah. All right, thanks very much, Lee, for all of your brilliant blonde moment stories. You're listening to 98 FM.
The sound of the city, from Sallynoggin to Swords. Dublin Talks. 98 FM's Dublin Talks.
And good morning from Adrian Kennedy. Today is, did you know? Maybe you did. Today is World Obesity Day. Obesity over the last 20 years has become a serious issue here in Ireland. 25% of adults have the disease of obesity, with a further 25% at high risk of developing the disease. of obesity, meaning that it is an epidemic across this country. And you just have to walk down the street to see this with your own two eyes for yourself. The Irish Society for Clinical Nutrition and Metabolism has said today that it's time to stop with the "it's your fault" attitude, because it is actually harming people with obesity. Research on attitudes to obesity in Ireland in 2019 found that people with the condition are looked down on as lazy, overindulgent, and deserving of what they get. In other words, it is this attitude that many of us have, that you only have yourself to blame for being obese. And this is something that on World Obesity Day, they want to try and change. They want us to stop fat shaming, essentially. We think it's our God-given right to look at somebody who's obese or morbidly obese and say, God, jeez, look at the state of them. It's their own fault that they're in that state. Well, we're being told that attitude has to change. We need to stop fat shaming people who have a disease called obesity. I would like to hear from you on 6797 981. You can text, WhatsApp, or send a WhatsApp voice note to 0877 98 98 98. Basically, what we're being told is that this attitude of looking down your nose on somebody who lives with obesity and thinking less of them because they're essentially fat has to stop. Because what we're doing is we're preventing people from accessing treatment because they feel ashamed. I'm joined on the line to explain a little bit more about how we need to stop fat shaming by consultant physician at St. Columkille's Hospital in Loughlinstown, Dr. Carl Neff. He says we need to change our view on obesity. Carl, let me begin by asking you, if I may, how serious of an issue is obesity here in Ireland?
So actually, Adrian, it's a very big problem. So more and more we're recognising now this chronic disease of obesity, which is affecting at least a quarter of the people in Ireland. In terms of age and gender, it really is across all ages and genders. We are seeing a greater prevalence of childhood obesity and obesity in younger people than we did in the past. But that's because we're seeing a greater rate of obesity across all of society, irrespective of age or gender. So it is a huge problem, primarily because obesity itself as a disease really affects the person's day-to-day ability to function. It affects their day-to-day health, but also is associated with many other chronic diseases. The ones that people know about are things like type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and high blood pressure. But actually obesity is associated with a lot of other diseases, including respiratory diseases and even some cancers. So obesity itself causes a lot of problems directly, but it's also associated with a lot of other serious health problems. So it is a major health issue, which is why we're really keen to raise the awareness of obesity as a disease, but also encourage people to seek help for their obesity if it's affecting their life or health.
Now, a lot of people, when they hear obesity being described as a disease, automatically jump into the category of people saying, well, it's not actually a disease. It's something you can do something about yourself. You have control over it. And that's the sort of attitude that you want to try and change.
Yes, so that's exactly it, because what you're describing there is obesity stigma, and that's the theme of World Obesity Day this year, is obesity stigma. And the reason we made that our theme is because it's the biggest barrier both to individuals seeking help for their obesity, but also in terms of healthcare providers treating people who present with obesity. And exactly what you described is a common misunderstanding about obesity, which is that this is a choice. So we have lots of evidence to say that healthcare providers themselves, doctors, nurses, dietitians, that see people with obesity more often than not, at least 70% of the time, think that this person is just not motivated. So if they just stuck to the diet, if they just did the exercise, they would lose weight, their obesity would go away. There's so much that's misunderstood in that idea.
Sorry to cut across you, just on that point. Is there no argument to support that some people who may be obese are obese because they're, as you said, not motivated?
So again, we don't, and person-first language is another thing, just to mention, just as you came across it there. So we don't say obese person, we say person with obesity, again, because we don't want to define a person by their obesity. But when it comes to that point of motivation, we know this, and the reason I'm so confident talking about this, and the reason that so many of the international associations with diabetes and obesity and other chronic diseases are coming out to support this idea of obesity stigma and the need to challenge it, is because we have decades now, about 2 decades of evidence that definitively show that if you treat people with diet and exercise, and these are people in research studies, these are people coming back visit after visit, month after month, year after year, and they're not getting the weight loss that they should get. And we actually also have studies showing why that is the case. And the reason that is the case is that for about, I think probably if you're being very generous, 1 out of every 5 people would be able to lose weight with diet and exercise alone. The majority will not. So at least 80% of people will not get that weight loss simply with diet and exercise. And the reasons for that are also known.
Okay, so this sort of attitude that many, many people have, that you only have yourself to blame for being that size, or it's because of your bad diet and lack of exercise that you're that size, you're saying that there is a cohort of people who can't do anything about it and need medical intervention.
Precisely, and that's not their fault. They're trying. The people that I meet in my obesity clinic, they've got much more willpower than me. They're working much harder than many people I know at trying to get things right, and they're failing. And the reason they're failing is not because they're bad people, it's because of their physiology. And we know the physiology that's wrong in people with obesity. It's basically that your imbalance between appetite and calorie burn is malfunctioning. So when people have obesity, when they go on a diet, 2 things happen. The first thing is that their appetite immediately increases. And when you think about that, it doesn't make sense, because fat is energy. So the idea of having fat in the human body is that it's an energy store, for that when we don't eat, we have an energy source to use. So of course, if people are carrying extra weight in the form of fat, the obvious logical expectation would be that when they go on a diet, they'll burn that fat. But that doesn't happen. Instead, they feel like they need to eat more as soon as they go on a diet. But the second and much more important part of the equation, in my point of view, because you can consciously, hunger is not conscious. Hunger is a primal instinct, but you can stop yourself from eating even if you're hungry. But what you cannot control is the amount of calories you burn. And we have lots of studies now that show that when people go on a diet, they stop burning calories. And this is why when people do go on a diet, what usually happens is they lose weight fairly easily or relatively easily for the first couple of weeks, and then they stop losing weight even though they've stuck to the diet. The reason that happens is that the body has this other adaptation, this other mechanism it can switch on to stop you losing weight, which is just to switch down the amount of calories that you need every day. And that means that even when people are on a reduced calorie diet, they stop. They just can't lose weight because their body reduces the calorie burn to meet that. That's not something they can control. That's not something that can be fixed by willpower or diet or exercise. It's just a physiological adaptation that prevents people from losing weight, and that's not people's fault.
Okay, so are we...
That's why they have obesity.
Okay, are we as a society partly to blame then because of this obesity stigma, because of fat shaming? Are we partly to blame for people not being able to deal with it or not being motivated to deal with it?
Absolutely, and that's what we're talking about today. And this is not really about blame. Blame is a hard thing to hear or to deal with. What we do need to be aware of is that by telling people just to work harder, that won't work for them. And what that makes people with obesity feel is just rejected and discouraged from even thinking about treating their obesity. So we all need to recognize 2 things. One is that obesity is individual's fault most of the time. Most of the time, this is a physiological problem, and they're working really hard to lose weight and they can't. The second thing, and I think this is for all of us in society to recognize, is that our environment now is very heavily obesogenic, meaning that it promotes the development of obesity. Because of the way that we market food, the way we make food available, we can prevent obesity. Obesity can be prevented by eating less, doing more, making our environment better. It cannot treat obesity most of the time, but it can definitely prevent it. And as a society, we definitely need to have a very serious conversation about the way we produce food, the way we market food, the way we make food available in pretty much anywhere. You can't go anywhere in our world today without having some calorie source pushed in your face at some point. And that's why we're now seeing obesity as a problem, not because people have suddenly in the last 3 decades become lazy and lacking in willpower and gluttonous. That's not why. It's because our environment has changed. The genetics haven't changed, the physiology hasn't changed, but our environment has.
Okay,
that's
so we as a society, and this is the message for today's World Obesity Day, is we as a society need to stop essentially looking down our noses at people who may be obese and stop fat shaming.
Essentially, that is the message. Don't judge. people with obesity, it's not their fault most of the time. This is something that they cannot control. So this is the main message of Obesity Stigma. Be aware of it. Be kind, don't judge, and people with obesity should know that there are treatments available, not unfortunately as widely available as we would like, but if your obesity is causing a problem, talk to your doctor or healthcare professional and seek help.
Okay, Dr. Carl Neff, consultant physician at St. Columkille's Hospital. Thank you very much indeed for talking to us on 98 FM.
Thank you, Adrian.
And I'd like to hear from you on 6797981. You can text, WhatsApp, or send a WhatsApp voice note to 0877 98 98 98. If you're somebody who is obese, do you feel that people look down their noses at you? Because what he's arguing is, well, no, they shouldn't be, because you've got a disease, and if you're belittled because of your disease, you won't seek help for that disease. That's really the argument that Carl Neff was putting across, that we need to stop shaming people for being overweight, basically. Call me right now on 6797981. I mean, the very first message that we got in is somebody who said, what a load of waffle. Eat less and move more. And this is the point that Dr. Neff is trying to get across here, that you're not getting it. Some people can't help being obese, that it is a disease that they need help with. Bill, you're on 98 FM. How are you, Bill?
How are you? How's things?
Bill, you describe yourself as being overweight.
I have a bit of a belly on me, Adrian. Yeah, it doesn't bother me in the slightest.
Would you be obese?
Oh, no. I wouldn't say that now. I have a belly. I'm about 2 stone. I'd say, oh boy, give and take. But look, at the end of the day, Adrian, you're a long time dead. And if you like your food, whatever. Your heartbeat has a certain amount of beats, and it's going to stop when it's going to stop, regardless of what you do in life. My father died when he was 92 years of age, and he did everything he wanted to do, and he lived that long. Now, if someone says to me, you're fat, I just say to them, yeah, I can do it, but you're still ugly. That's right. That's the answer I give them. You'll always be ugly. I can be skinny. You'll always be ugly.
But you get very defensive then, do you?
It's not to get defensive, boy. I don't care. I actually genuinely don't care.
Okay, but there are people that do care and get terribly upset.
Absolutely, I totally agree. And there's people that don't care. And in all fairness, pal, each to their own. You're at the end of the day, you're a long time dead. And no matter what you do in life, you're going to lose. No matter what you do.
Okay, but this whole concept of fat shaming, of even I saw this happen the other day. 2 lads walking along the street. Okay. Mm-hmm. This was just around the corner here on Grafton Street. 2 lads walking along the street. I'm walking behind them, and coming towards them was this guy who was, I can only describe as monstrous. Okay, he was a big fella.
Could have been genetic. Could have had a thyroid problem.
But the point I'm making is that when he walked past them, their heads turned around and followed him all the way up the street, as if to go, oh my Jesus, look at the size of him. That's fat shaming.
Maybe, but they must have so perfect lives. Great.
But that is fat shaming. This is the point.
Shaming, yeah, but at the end of the day, he I'm sure that chap who he slagged off knows he's overweight. I'm sure he knows. He's not stupid.
But isn't this the point that the doctor is trying to make? That them, by doing that, now I don't know if he was aware that they turned their heads and followed him up the street, but by doing that, they are belittling his disease. They are making him feel 2 foot tall.
Yeah, of course, but at the end of the day, I reckon he's very, very used to that. I'm sure at the end of the day, he didn't realise that they were doing it.
Isn't that exactly the point? He shouldn't have to be used to it. He shouldn't have to feel that people are looking at him. That's the argument that the doctor is making.
No, you're right. He shouldn't have to feel that way. He shouldn't have to be in a position where he feels so down and by being belittled by himself, by people around him, that he feels so sad about it. But at the end of the day, like listen, last year he could have been 3 stone heavier, and he's doing something about it. If you don't know what's going through people's heads, Adrian. You don't know what's going on in people's lives.
Okay, but that's the exact argument that the doctor is making. Stop judging people who are who are
you know
obese.
What's going on in their lives. You
that's
don't know.
Exactly the point. All right, let me go to Ger. You're on 98 FM. How are you, Ger?
Hi, Adrian. How are you?
Ger, what's your reaction to this, what this doctor is saying? And one of the themes of World Obesity today is that we have to stop with this "it's your fault" attitude.
Yeah. People don't understand, Adrian. I was 34 stone, and I'm 12 stone now.
Wow.
I attend the clinic up in Loughlinstown in the hospital.
Oh, so you might know Dr. Neff, do you?
I've never actually met him. I go to Mr. Gagan or Donald O'Shea. But the team up there do unbelievable work. But it's the public first that need to stop shaming people.
Okay, so tell me what life was like for you when you were 34 stone.
But I wouldn't go out. I wouldn't go to parties. I wouldn't go to weddings. I wouldn't do anything.
And why was that?
Because I was embarrassed. Because I tried every diet. I'd lose, say, 8 or 10 pounds the first couple of weeks, and I'd say, oh, this is great, I'll keep going. And then as soon as you go off the wagon, then again it comes back on. And still to this day, you still get the urge that you want to eat this and you want to eat that, and you know in your head that you can't.
So just come back to me for 1 second about you didn't go out anywhere because you were embarrassed. Were you embarrassed because you knew... That's what I was about to say, yeah.
People judge you. They shouldn't judge you by your weight. But people do judge you by your weight, and you're jeered because your weight, and people don't talk to you if you're overweight.
And would people actually jeer you and slag you?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
What would they say to you?
Here comes Thunder Ties, and who ate all the pies, and here's Hippo and stuff like that.
And would these be friends of yours?
Some of them. And the most hurtful thing of all is what people say behind your back. But they don't realise that you hear them back.
So you knew when you were that size that people had looked down their noses at you, basically?
Yeah, yeah.
They saw you as someone... Do they? Why?
Yeah, they call me a cheat because I had a gastric bypass. But I had to have that reversed 3 years ago because I got very ill. But I'm doing it, as I say, on my own now, and I've put on 2 stone in 3 years. But I'm happy at what I'm at now. I can go out walking, I can go on the bus, I can go shopping.
So you've lost that embarrassment, have you?
Not really, no, not at all.
Really?
I can go shopping now
after that achievement.
That's some achievement, yeah. But people don't say, "Oh, well done," or "You're putting on a bit of weight again."
Rather than recognising the fact that you actually shed 20 stone.
Well, I said 24 altogether, but I put 2 stone back on over 3 years.
Okay, well, 20 plus stone.
Yeah.
That's extraordinary.
And I wasn't on medication or anything. This was all preventative because I hadn't got high cholesterol. I didn't have diabetes. And they put me forward for the gastric bypass to prevent this so I wouldn't be costing the country money.
So what I'm hearing from you, Ger, is that when you were that weight, you had no confidence. The confidence was literally knocked out of you.
Whatsoever.
And even though you've lost all the weight now and are doing brilliantly, that confidence hasn't really returned.
Not really, no. But I will go now on the bus. I'll get the bus to Dunleary. I'll get the bus out to Bray. But I wouldn't do that before.
Okay, stay there. Okay, so you're urging people to stop judging people who are obese.
Yeah. I'm begging people to stop it because they don't know the effect that it has on you.
All right. Great to talk to you, Ger, and I'm delighted to hear how well you've done. And I certainly wouldn't be friends with anybody who would say you're a cheat or whatever it is.
Oh, they did.
I'd be giving them the 2 fingers now.
What you hear back.
Good to talk to you, Ger. Thanks for sharing your story with us. JD, you're on 98 FM. How are you, JD?
Good morning, Adrian. How are you, pal?
You've put on a bit of weight, it says on my screen here. And people say it to you.
Yeah, they say to me, JD, you have to put on a bit of weight. I just say, it's more to me to love. That's all I say. It's more to me to love.
Doesn't bother you?
It shuts them up. No, it shuts them up. They have nothing to say then.
You see, this is the whole point of this conversation, that people feel that they've a God-given right to judge people based on their size, and you've just heard that lady describe how it destroyed her. She couldn't go outside the front door. Liz, send me this WhatsApp voice note.
Adrian, I'm just got into the car. I was just hitting your programme there, your topic. What was I going to say? We're here for a good time, not for a long time. Okay, good morning, it's Liz.
And Jeanette sent us this WhatsApp voice
I don't
note.
agree with most of what that man said. I do, however, agree that obesity does cause diseases, but people who are obese, it's a food addiction, and it's a comfort for them eating, obviously because of depression or other underlying reasons. But I don't think obesity itself is a disease. That's like saying an addiction on the streets, like heroin is a disease. It's not a disease, it's an addiction. And people with addictions can get help. People who have diseases, that they could have for the rest of their lives cannot get help. So I totally, I'm sorry, but I disagree. I disagree with him.
All right, Jeanette, and finally, people can be so rude. I recently lost 8 stone, and it's amazing the amount of people that will say hello to you down the street, and when I was big, they'd completely ignore you. I want that to be food for thought for you today for this World Obesity Day. Thank you for joining us today. Barry Dunn is next. He's got some great music in the next hour, like these.
Love kickstarts again. The sound of the city, from Stony Batter to Step Aside. Dublin Talks. 98 FM's Dublin Talks.